Yes, I'm happy to. And just very few words, basically welcoming Scott and Nils for again having a special OGC session on the ISO TC Plenary Week. And it seems that we have been sharing events and inviting each other more and more recent time. And I think this is a great opportunity for our both memberships to get to know each other better. And sometimes I'm tempted to say the world is too small to have too many, standards organizations. Maybe that's someone might object to that, but I've said it. Welcome, welcome Scott and Nils, and it will be really interesting to listen to this today. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Agneta, and thank you everyone. Agneta and Mats for inviting us again to this presentation, and for all of you attending. What we want to do today is really try to cover two things. One, give you an update on what OGC's been up to in the last 6 months. So this is in lieu of what we often do as a liaison report in the plenary session, just so that you're informed of what we're up to, understand some of OGC's activities, but not necessarily go into a particularly deep dive on any of those standardization efforts. And today we're going to do something a little different than we've done in the last couple of times we've presented. And that is, we want to focus more on what goes on in OGC's innovation program. And so after I give you this update of standards activities, we're going to talk more about, let's say, some of that sausage making. How do you get to the standards? And the innovation program is OGC's applied research organization inside our consortium, where we actually execute projects to test existing standards that are already out there in the marketplace, identify new standardization targets to be added to those standards, or potentially identify new standards, and then exercise those in real world environments against either scenarios, different themes, different cross-cutting kind of relationships necessary. And we execute a lot of projects every year. And so Dr. Niels Hempelman is with me today. He will be presenting on the activities in that program. We have, I think, 10 staff that work in this program. We do lots and lots of projects, 20 plus per year. And there's millions of dollars of executed work. Primarily, these projects occur with OGC light touch management and very, very heavy participation from our members who do all the really hard work. But there's really some superb things that we get to execute in the innovation program. And I think you'll be really excited to see some of this work. So before I turn this over to Niels, let me just give you an update on what we've been up to in the last few months here in OGC. And so since we last met in June, we've had 6 new OGC standards approved, 1 new best practice, only 1 engineering report. Normally I have like 20 of those for you, but there will be something like 30 or more published in the next 2 months. So you'll see lots more of those coming. And we stood up 3 new working groups. Looking at those standards, 2 of them come from the OGC API family. So part 1 of the processes standard is published or is approved, as is part 1 of the core standard, common standard. We also have a new update to the coverage implementation schema for referenceable grids, an update to the geopackage extension for tile grid and coverage data. So those 2 are quite similar. A new community standard for updating index 3D seam layer, that's developed by Esri. So Esri publishes the I3S specification, and in OGC's process of having community standards, where we take those specs developed external to OGC, but where we see them important as part of our standards baseline, we can bring them in as benchmarked community standards. So Esri has done some heroic work on continuing to evolve I3S and synchronize it with OGC. And then finally, Simple Features 2021, which there's a whole great story there for folks on another day, perhaps, but this is a significant enhancement to what's already in existence in the Simple Features family of standards, in particular to work with new schema-less encodings like JSON, as well as to handle much more sophisticated measurements on the Earth's surface with different spheroidal or ellipsoidal geometries. 1 best practice on Earth observation application package itself, which may ultimately result in a standard or a meta standard that identifies those pieces that you need to put together to have a sort of total Earth observation application environment for analysis. An engineering report reporting on our last sprint on interoperable simulation and gaming. I won't talk much more about that because Niels is going to talk about some of that work. And then 3 working groups. So we have a new standards working group for training data markup language for artificial intelligence and machine learning. Initial focus will be on imagery. So what is the metadata necessary to describe imagery that is being used for training or validation of machine learning models? That will continue to other types of machine learning content. We have one for 3D geovolumes. That's to form OGC API for 3D geovolumes. And finally, a new domain working group to talk about planetary systems. Initial focus probably on coordinate reference systems for other planetary bodies, but who knows where that will go, right? We've got the whole universe ahead of us. Our meetings, what we used to call our technical and planning committee meetings, now known as our member meetings. We've been virtual, of course, like everyone else, still stuck in that rut. But next week, we have our next virtual meeting, all of next week, starting at on Monday. Those meetings are US Pacific Coast time, so they're rather late for Europe and even a little bit late for US East Coast, but it's North America Pacific time. In March, we do plan maybe to be physical on the West Coast of the USA, likely San Francisco Bay Area, but that's not fully confirmed yet. We're trying to organize in Europe, if possible, in June. And in September, once again, we'll be working with Singapore Land Authority to hold our meeting in Singapore. We did a virtual meeting with them in September very successfully. We are no longer going to hold a traditional member meeting in December. We're moving to 3 per year. Yet in December, we're going to host the first of what we're referring to as our innovation meetings, where we will be presenting the results of innovation projects over the year, a lot of what Niels is going to show you, but in great detail over many days, and still have some of the OGC activity to get things approved and moved forward. All right, on to what's in work right now. Let me talk briefly about our standards roadmap. So if you go to ogc.org/roadmap, you will find this standards roadmap. If you're an OGC member, you see something that's extra colorful with little numbers on it like this. It tells you where every standard sits, how long it's been sitting at that stage, and where they are for their approval, what's in work. Orange is in work, green is complete. If you're not an OGC member, you'll see similar, but you'll just see green and orange blobs, and you won't get any information on the days anything set at a various stage. But you can see lots of OGC API standards in work right now. Lots of those. And a few others. We have updated sensor things that just recently occurred. Time series is just recently finished and being published. And then a few others are discrete global grid systems, which is joint work with ISO TC211 now, and some other observation managements and coverages work, both up there as joint work. And finally, at the bottom, I talked a bit earlier in the last session on the JAG about the ZAR community standard. That's an encoding for data cubes. We've held a number of sprints rather than go into a huge amount of detail on these, because again, a lot of these operate under innovation program rules as well. I just want to highlight there were 5 sprints last year. We had 367 participants from all over the world in these sprints, and we exercised more than 10 standards. We had 10 slotted for really hard work against in these sprints. These sprints are, again, a place where we innovate against the standards. We either try to validate how good they are now, or try to identify those that are emerging, what aspects of the specification are in good shape and which need new work. So we can develop code concurrently with specifications, work these through agile 3-day-long sprints, and improve these standards in real time, and it gets us through them really quickly. When I said 10 plus, that's because every time we do a sprint, someone throws in some other cool sprints that we've never seen before, or standards that we hadn't thought of using before. It just makes it far more interesting. So there's always new stuff coming up in our sprints. The most recent one in November of 2021, we held jointly with TC211 and specifically had work from Working Group 4, where we focused on ISO 19168, which is also the OGC API for features. All of you probably know Clemens Portela with Interactive Instruments. He showed off some really great work fusing a number of different types of feature content and coordinate reference systems, so multiple CRSs for part 2 of the features API. And I'm an OGC member at Cherry, who I've found has been just a really brilliant developer of interfaces, and they've been able to demonstrate the fusion of piles and piles of these API services in single environments. And so it's kind of hard to read on the left, but there's some really complicated content that's being fused in here, including a 3D modeling and simulation standard that's not even exposed according to normal APIs, but they built their own API to fuse it with all the other OGC APIs. So that's a great part of this sprint, as people work live against these specifications and standards, develop code, and at the end of the sprint are able to present new work, new code running against these specs, even as they're in evolution. A few things, some recommendations we got from the last one, some work to do in our innovation program. So you're going to hear about a few of these projects again in a moment, but really looking at, might we use ISO 19168 for delivering underground feature data and three-dimensional data. Some more work on the new extensions are coming up for common query language and for editing of content, what used to be the transactional part of the web feature service, and looking at perhaps some more sophisticated pilot. And within our standards program activities, we do need to complete that common query language so that you can query feature data when the OGC API features or ISO 19168. Work on alignment between OGC API records and STAC, the spatio-temporal asset catalog, which is being developed outside of OGC. And then more work on part 2 as that goes through the approval process in ISO. So that's the rundown of all the great, exciting things we've been doing in the standards program over the last 6 months or so. If there are any questions for me, I'm happy to talk about those before we jump into talking about the actual innovation program activities. And if none, then
I have a question. It's Jan speaking.
Yeah, hi Jan.
Hello. Regarding the meeting in next week, if I look at the website, it seems that you have Eastern Standard Time on the schedule there, while you said you have a West Coast time.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sorry about our, and it gets worse. Our calendar system is, we've broken something. But here's the reality. What you see on the schedule in the meeting portal does show Eastern Standard Times, and those are correct times. But we've organized the meeting to be very friendly to the West Coast of North America. And so the timing, not the hours, but the timing is really good for those folks. But we're also working on a new platform. All the meetings going to be hosted on something called Eventry. So all of your networking and breakout sessions, as well as all the individual tracks, will all be in that one session. There will no longer be go-to meetings at this meeting. They'll all be in Eventry. And Eventry, when you look at its master catalog, puts everything in Pacific time. So it is the bane of my existence, these time zone things. I just do all the math in my head all the time. I happen to know what calendar uses what. So yes, please be very careful. Whatever we post at the top or the bottom of the calendar as the time zone of that calendar is correct. So you'll see some in Eastern Standard Time and some in Pacific Standard Time. And my apologies that it's not so clear. Hopefully we can get that fixed for our next meeting.
Thank you very much. I'll be aware.
Yeah. So a warning, we need to do an OGC. We need to have temporal standards. Gee, we should figure this out. All right, well, with that, I'd like to introduce to you now, again, Dr. Niels Hempelman with OGC. So Niels works in our innovation program. And I'm just going to comment because I love working with Niels. Besides the fact that he's absolutely brilliant, he's a really excellent communicator and has been helping us so much on making sure that the work we do in OGC is relevant to other domains and other topic areas. And so sometime anyone who's really interested, go catch up with Niels on climate issues right now, because he's been running our client sessions and will again at the upcoming member meeting. And he's really good at tying together where these standards actually fit in real world problems. And so today, Niels is going to go over the innovation program and activities. And Niels, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot. I hope my screen is already been shared.
It is, yes.
Okay, thanks a lot. And then for the nice introduction, And yeah, Scott is absolutely right in that I'm more or less still a newcomer in OGC. I joined OGC in February. Well, it's quite a while ago, but still I'm learning how OGC is working. And giving the introduction now to all the projects in innovation is quite a challenge for me. So be nice and gentle, that if I'm maybe not not knowing all the details of all the projects. Here is the presentation, and yes, making this the connection in between the standardization program or the standardization cycle and the innovation program or the innovation cycle. Here is a nice yeah, how we are interacting with each other. So it's not a clear border in between, so that we are kind of a lot of exchanging. And then in the innovation cycle or innovation program, we have several activities, but I'm now going to present you in the next hour, where we are developing, yeah, all kind of technical new roads, and then feeding that into this standardization cycle. But then in the other way around as well, and kind of we are getting the feedbacks that we need more on that. And that there is a pain point here, and that please can you find a new solution, and then the innovation cycle is being activated, or the innovation program is setting up a new activity in which kind of largeness you will see in the next slide. So we have different how to say that activities, different sizes. They can be from big test beds, which are quite large ones, up to just only a design experiment or in conceptual conceptual development study or interoperability experiment or something like that. And then the sprints has been already mentioned out, that we are kind of bundling, gathering people together, and then working on a specific topic to come up with with some quick solutions, or then other things are also then pilots, for example, which are very common and a nice frame to be used, and when we need to develop some specific yeah, with a technical solution for any kind of difficulty which needs to be solved. And here is to bring that a bit in order also in terms of the technology readiness level. So that's not nothing is carved in stone here, but that's just only for an orientation. So how we can address the different difficulties or the levels of abstract of challenges that what we need to face. And how we are then setting it up. Well, we can say it in a nutshell, and that very easy. So kind of for all kind of difficulty, we find an appropriate solution. We have an appropriate frame for that to roll an activity out. Right. And with that, I can start into more the content and the activities itself. So what we are doing, and this I'm starting here with, and this is more an overarching one, is the knowledge graph development. So the problem here is, or you see the kind of the symbol of a brain, and the idea is more to merge all the different developments together. And here's the motivation, is that we have standards developed over multiple organizations. So here we have OGC, ISO, but then there's W33C, that I'm coming from a climate community, so this is very common there, or then also there's standards coming from the WMO, etc. And how can we bridge them actually? How can they fit together? And then each of the standards represents or presents several concepts, and that you need to bridge the concepts in between, and to bring, or of not being just limited to one of the organizations, which is actually currently a very ongoing, active, important, important development to find or to use. And so we are more and more starting to work together, and we're forced to work together. And with that, we need to have the different concepts to be taken into account, for not kind of merging things out and then only one of the organizations are the winners, so that to have them in a better synergy together. And then the specification components have internal relationships, and that here the concepts are kind of ingested into the into the knowledge graph, and to be mapped here, right? Right, and for sure, well, it needs to be scaled in a way so that the old standards are from the past into the future activities, so that we can kind of having a clear dynamic and then sustainability. These are the use cases, and then here the developer would like to find a precise definition and the concepts which is already in use, or find the standards which he needs to develop he needs to address in his concepts, and needs to publish the concepts from the standards, and that the developer has been used, sorry, and then and then needs to publish the information, which is then possible within this this knowledge graph. And the use case is that, well, it's pretty much the same idea. So as a standard developer, you need to have the precise definition and the concepts, which is already in use, and needs to publish the information into the relationship between of the different concepts. And as a standard user, on the other side, is you need to find a kind of which is specific and how to implement that then into the application. Right. The next point is, so that's kind of what we are trying to bridge the different organizations. And the next point is the definition server. That's internal, or that's an OGC specific. And the purpose is that we have different interoperability, or semantic interoperability. So metadata, with the data are being named in the different domains, for example, in different ways, or we have multiple languages as well. And then how to facilitate the semantic interoperability in between of the different systems which are using the OGC standards. And here, what we are, the approach is that we are, you will see that in the next slide, is that we're providing a unique URL, which is then giving the appropriate OGC specification. And for the content, for example, we have the different coordinate reference systems. I might have to check that if there's also the time compliance as well. And here, kind of, we are targeting the metadata and bridging the in between of the different systems by semantic interoperability. And here, well, maybe I'm skipping that one, in a nutshell. Well, the main point is there is an OGC definition server really running, or is it physically running, so you can have an URL and you can access that over a platform where you can make your registration, and then feeding that into the definition server, and bringing your semantic into kind of like the bringing that into the definition server, and then that other application and other developers that can use it. And it's getting more complicated if you would like to have that. So the semantic mapping and how that works, we have kind of quite high-level persons who are able to work on that, and then pushing it further on a quite high level. And if you would like to have further information, then we can, don't hesitate of reaching out, and then we can deal in. The basic principle behind this, and that's consistent in all of the innovations, what we're doing, or all the innovation activities, what we're doing, are the FAIR principles, and that by bridging semantic, for example, that data, but that also then the entire infrastructures are getting fair with following the FAIR standards. And this is standing for findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And that's especially in Europe is getting more and more important, and that when we're talking about common European data spaces, and the findability is it's website published, so it's findable over the web, and the accessibility, that means that you have an URL where you can access. The second point, you open and free. It's a bit of an interpretation, and that you can also say it's still accessible, that even if you have to pay for that. So it's there is also a bit of room of interpretation here. But then comes interoperability, and that's very important for especially the innovation program. Is that the different models are interoperable, and then the definition graph, the knowledge graph or the definition server are actually already targeting exactly that on a quite high abstract levels. And then the reusability is also a very big part where we are talking a lot about it, and that there's one thing is that the data and the infrastructures can be reused. So that means you have to build up the software snippets in a way that you have building blocks that can be then fitting together like puzzle pieces, and you can build multiple applications out of the same building block. But it is also, if you are, for example, talking about data, so that the data can be then reused, and you don't have to make the same work again without inventing the wheel and second time. And reusability has also a large discussion when it comes to intellectual property. So who is actually in charge of that, and are you allowed to give it further? So here also the principles are quite easily to understand, but then doing that in reality is taking a lot of time and effort and a lot of discussion, and we're trying to make a good job of pushing that forward as good as possible. Well, that's can be skipped so that we can directly go to the activities which are ongoing. So what is currently on stage, and we have what I'm presenting here is the activities which is coming from the innovation program. A few just recently closed, and then a large set of activities which are currently ongoing, and then or in the way of starting. So the future one, or even the postponed. And well, the postponed is there's so many postponed there's so many coming up, or so many in the pipeline, so that I was just making a summary at the end, except for the last slides. If you're interested in further information, then you will find all the information in more detail, and then also here with the different links to the project websites, etc., on the web page. So under innovation, you will find then active initiatives, for example, and then here you will find everything, all the initiatives which are active. So most of the projects here are not only in OGC, but OGC is involved, and then there is a consortium, so with other organizations. The organizations can be OGC members or they are not, so here there is no limit. So that just only to understand that this is not all our work, so we are working with quite a lot of people together and making that possible. This is one where I'm starting with, is the gaming. and just recently finished. And then when we are talking about gaming, the problem here, or the first things what we need to do is that having exchange of information for 3D for 3D content. And here OGC has been working with it. Roland Phillips has been in charge of. So if you have further questions on that, right, I think that's fine for now. Oh, sorry, wrong button. And next one also just recently finished. This is a CDR. So in the ideas of different frames that we have, this is a concept development study for health. And that's for sure with that targeting or addressing COVID-19, for example, and all that is just only understandable when we have location information present. So, well, it's, I think, quite nicely understandable with the COVID-19, and we're seeing always the different maps and what is going on where. So there is a geospatial information standing in the background, multiple data sources who needs to be merged to each other. And that's very quickly calling for standardization in the geospatial data models. And that was the conceptual development study has been addressed, and we have just finished that in a couple of just recently finished. And then the second one, as just as an example, because we have quite a lot of different activities recently finished, so the list is quite long. You can find everything in more detail also in the on the platform. This is the CDR. That's again a conceptual development study for the platforms. And here you see that in the picture, the satellite image. So that's been targeting the architectures of Earth observation cloud platforms. Here we have from ESA, from NASA, with different exploitation platforms, for example, and the open data cubes, which is being developed by GEOS or by USE or UNAPGrid, etc. And then this is kind of the topic where the cloud platform has been addressed and is recently finished. The next one, now we are moving to the current and still ongoing ones, is the Federated Marine SDI. So SDI stands for Spatial Data Infrastructure. This is, in this case, it's a pilot. So just to understand the size, here again, Roland Phillips is in charge of that. If you would like to have more information on that. And if you're talking about marine SDIs, and then actually it is not really marine, well, it's the transition between land and sea. So it's targeting coastal regions, and you see that in the picture. So it is the harbors, the ships, etc., which is extremely necessary that you have a proper spatial data infrastructure for that. And right then for that, I can have that. This is another one, an unstaffed systems, so UAS and command control. This is an interoperability experiment. So another kind of size or frame interoperability experiments are quite common also in OGC, whether it's something similar like in pilot, but well, addressing more kind of the interoperability of already existing building blocks. And it has been basically developed from Kongsberg Geospatial and then the partners, and then OGC is currently starting to, this is a project which is starting next year. So it's the kickoff will be next year in the first quarter, in springtime. So it's something which is upcoming, and And that's maybe also the reason why there is no responsible person. So you need to reach out to Scott and me if you would like to have more information on that. Then we are moving over to another. So there are now two projects which are in line with each other. This is agriculture. We are going into the agriculture domain now, and here interoperability. That's what one of the things that I learned in the last weeks and months is that in agriculture we have a lot of different names and a very large variety of semantic because a lot of very little solutions, and then especially here I have more the perspective of Europe. I'm based in Germany, and here we have very, very small parcels and the different countries and with the different history and also other political systems and regulations, etc. So, and that's resulting in that the agriculture domain is very, very heterogeneous. And here we're trying to address it, and CBL is focusing on high performance computing that's then enabling precise agriculture. And yeah, you see the pictures here. So how to foster or how to use the high performance computing. So to kind of deal with all the large amount of data, including their heterogeneity in the agriculture domain. And then a second one, this is related, is Demeter. Demeter is also a European project that focusing on agriculture. Here it's a bit different, slightly focus. So it's more IoT based or Internet of Things based questions, so less the high performance computing. It can be found in Demeter as well, but here it is more in the use cases on the field, directly connected with the farmers and we have a lot of co-creation workshops, and so that the farmers are really defining their needs and the difficulties and what they need, or then defining the problems, and then the developers are coming out with clever solutions. And it is organized in 20 pilots by 5 thematic groups, so by 5 clusters. Precision agriculture is there included as well, but then they're focusing on grapes or wine or olives in the Mediterranean region, or then or to sheep and cows or milk production and etc. Happy Chicken is one of the projects, for example, so where you can have with sensors and then seeing the movements of the chickens, and then having kind of the digital information models in between, and getting an idea of if the animals are still feeling well, or if they're maybe starting to become sick or hungry or something like that. And yeah, but with in general, also to optimize the agriculture, or to optimize the situation for the animals, and or to have a better synergy in between of the different actors. And we are just currently here finalizing the report on the stakeholder requirements. That's actually the due date today. That's what I'm going to do after this talk. And yeah, I'm responsible for that project, so feel free to reach out if you would like to have more information on this part here. Then we're going further to another project that's eShape, and then here eShape is another very large, also European project, and agriculture is a part of that, but it's also slightly shifted into a different focus. And one of the main focus that we are having here is Earth observation, how to foster that, how to bring the satellite images, for example, into operational services. So how to build up the appropriate data infrastructures, having the Earth observation in the cloud, and then building around the appropriate applications, including the platforms, and that then on the other side, the users are retrieving or getting appropriate information, so if possible on demand for their specific use cases. Then here as well, that we have different pilots, and that in this case are 37 pilots clustered in 7 domains. So agriculture is one of them. I'm not really sure about the others one, but yeah, it can be figured out quickly. And for sure, we are trying to build up the platforms in a way so that they are, or the data spaces behind the backend, so that they are following the FAIR principles in the systems, so that all kind of building blocks that have been implemented into the architectures can be then taken out, and if you can use it or reuse it somewhere else in a new platform that you're trying to build up, this is done possible. E-shape is very close related to the discussions that we have here, and the development, the innovations that we are developing here are very close to the other Earth observation providers. So, well, it's when we are talking about Europe, then it's the ESA, the European Space Agency, and then connected with that, or coming from the European Commission, we have Copernicus. We have Copernicus, which is quite close or quite present in this project in E-shape, and then in general we are following the ideas which are being developed and discussed in the diocese. So data information access systems, and right, yeah, I think here on that side we can stop here. Well, yeah, if you have any kind of questions, you can always ask for that. And then Marie-Françoise Verdot is in charge of that, and she's also very happy on that if you are having any kind of questions, so don't hesitate of reaching out to anybody of us. And here comes another one, and I've colleagues seen in the list of participants, if I'm not misleading that what we have here in GOA3, that this is a project organized, coordinated by colleagues in Finland, and also well, others from across Europe. So here, GOA3 stands for Geospatial Enabled Ecosystem for Europe, and so that could also be agriculture, but in this case we are having 3 use cases, which is smart cities, solar energy, and transportation. And so beside agriculture, health, you will see other domains later on as well, and so these are kind of new other sectors that we are targeting with that. And the discussions that we are enabling here, or what we are holding here, enabled ecosystem, is in the same idea. So how can we bridge different ongoing developments? And one of the use cases, or what we're having, so the partners in Finland having the smart city data infrastructure for Helsinki, and then right next to it is Tallinn from Iceland, Estonia, and in 2 cities quite close to each other, but then there is a sea in between, and it's also organized quite differently. How can these 2 cities are better interact with each other? So that's kind of the use case where we are establishing around the different architectures and portals, the urban data portals. And GWA3 is very close with, then now we are moving into Europe again, into Inspire, the Inspire network, or the Inspire spatial data infrastructure, which is existing. And that here we're setting up on top of that and developing new features or new applications. And well, in Inspire you will find already quite a lot of OGC standards, and that here OGC is pretty present. And then on the other side, is that on top of Inspire we have a very strong ongoing and very interesting speeding up discussion about Gaia X. Gaia X is for the moment is an conceptual idea coming from Europe, so it's independently now of OGC, but we are observing that and then bringing our contribution, and when it's requested, when it's necessary, speeding it up, and then trying to establish or re-establish, or is a kind of a little bit of a data revolution, if I'm understanding that right, that how to enable an European digital infrastructure is to say that more habit on how data can be shared. And the talks about that are very inspiring. And just a couple of days ago, there was the symposium, GAIA-X symposium, and it's very passionate when people are talking about that and speaking about their ideas. So here, what they try to do is setting up also based on FAIR principles and interoperability, based on data spaces, and which are then federated or decentralized, and how this kind of infrastructures and these principles can establish a higher synergy of the European, but then afterwards also globally, and enabling a better economic synergy in between of the different players. Well, okay, that was a bit of an excursion, but GWA3 is compared to GAIA-X a very small little project, but we are having the vision in mind, and we are trying to work in this direction. There's also a website on GWA3, so don't hesitate to reach out there. And then another one is testbed and testbed 17. So with that, you can already understand that we have different testbeds regularly. So this is now the number 17, which I'm presenting here, but the number 18 is already on the way, and it's ready to start. And the one here, 17, is more or less finished so far. So testbeds is, as I said that in the very beginning, are one of the initiatives frames that we have in OGC, and so the more larger one, larger than pilots, and normally, they are always run by participants, so OGC members can then participate to the testbed. So the settings are of the people who are contributing are always different. And in the testbed 17, there were, or in general, the testbeds are very often quite close related to Earth observation data, or geo cubes or data cubes, and then they had been focusing on bridging data cubes and Earth observation data and climate or numerical model data. And then here we have sensor integration and then moving features, for example, how to bring the appropriate data infrastructures into data cubes. How can the data exchanged? There is always a question about data-centric security, for example. That's also a topic which is always on the hot burner and is being discussed by quite extensively and largely. And right, and in the end, what is the outcome is a technical solution, but and normally is also being reported and in an engineering report, which is for the testbed 70 most likely coming up in very quickly, and then we can launch testbed 18. Then we have another one, because this is a pilot now directly coming from the OGC initiative as well, because they're directly coming from OGC, so very similar to the testbed frames. So in contrast to, for example, CBL or Demeter, where we are working among others, and the coordination and the lead of the project is being in charge of another organization, and OGC is just a contributor, or is a contributor in this case. So the OGC pilot is, we are organizing that. We are calling for the sponsors. We are organizing the contributors, the participants, and then also being in charge and keeping track on all the different developments which has been done. In this case, disaster, it's actually the contrary. It's disaster resilience. So what we are setting up here is the emergency response. Is for the emergency response systems, which is, in my eyes, one of the kind of the queen discipline of interoperability, and everything needs to be in place, and you have to do a very clear and good homework, so that in the moment of a disaster, everything is ready and the information can be extracted quite quickly. So in case of I don't know, you need that when there is a landslide, there is a volcano eruption, there is a flood somewhere, or whatever happens, and then within in a very quick time, you need decision-ready information for the decision makers, so that they can get into action very quickly. And then depending on the situation and depending on the disaster itself, means that it needs to be you need to have really good systems working that in the moment of the disaster, and when you need to act, that you can extract information out of a very large and most likely distributed data volume, and get ready and get into action to kind of reduce the disaster and act appropriately in most of the cases. Or we are more and more talking about situations where we then really can save lives. So here we are kind of having even a very high responsibility of what we are actually doing. Right, yeah, you see here 2020 flood in the Red River basins, and floods and landslides. So this is the topics what we are targeting for the moment. That's quite close related to climate. And with that, we are coming up to the next pilot, and this is very close related to disaster. So in terms of when disaster is induced by climate, then it's kind of a climate disaster. Here in the climate change service, we are actually not so much talking about disasters itself. So climate change, well, yeah, we can say that's a disaster by default, but what we are providing here, what we would like to provide here is the informations that you need for the governments, for example, or for the municipalities, and so to set up your long-term decisions. So everything which which is not needed for a quick response. So like the disaster pilot here in climate change, we are talking about the information that you need for the long-term decision makers, for the reporting systems that is necessary for the United Nations. So a couple of weeks ago we had the COP26 in Glasgow. So that's the kind of discussions which we are targeting here. And it's a pilot which has been launched now. We are currently in the phase of calling for sponsors, and then by the next year we will then roll it out. And it is pilot. It is actually planned as being multiple pilots. So we will have kind of multiple periods and focus areas where we are then targeting the different pain points that needs to be addressed in the community. And well, here that's very much related to as well to the Copernicus services, which has been set up. So the climate change service, or also the atmospheric monitoring service, and then with that, you can already see, so where is actually the difficulty in climate change services. We have to bring multiple distributed data sources, large data sources. So we're talking about multiple petabytes. And out of that, we need to extract complex information for people who are most likely very far away from technical difficulties. They are not developers, and they're decision makers in the policy or somewhere in the municipality, and they need to be addressed with understandable information. That's what we are targeting here. Also upcoming and more or less a new initiative, but it looks like it will stay for a while. And then depending on kind of, if it is very quickly, then it's more on the disaster pilot. And then if it is on long term in terms of the UNFCCC frameworks, policy frameworks, then we will target it here in the service, in the climate change service pilot. Talking a bit more about climate, and maybe you see now I'm also a bit more confident in what I'm talking about. That's actually my background, or that's where I'm also coming from. So in terms of OGC standards and innovations that related to climate, and that you can all the time reach out to me, and then I'm very happy to exchange with that. So this also that one, and that CLIND is a project that I'm contributing to. CLIND is standing for climate intelligence, and climate intelligence means that kind of in the spatial data infrastructures for climate, we are implementing artificial intelligence to enhance the services. And so it's a very ambitious project. And what we're doing here are, it's also launched quite recently. So we are pretty much in the beginning still. We are currently writing the first deliverables about the data management plan and setting up the appropriate repositories. So what we're doing here is, it's together with the rest of the consortium, which is quite scientifically, is developing artificial intelligence methodologies that are then learning a specific area in detail and understanding the weather processes and what's going on in the area, and specifically focusing on extreme events. So when there is a heat wave, when there is a storm, when there is a flood, and then we can then check all the data and learning the servers, as particularly for one region, to figure out why has this extreme been so extreme as it has been. And so we are kind of going beyond the current scientific understanding of meteorology, and starting to learn the servers to understand the physical processes. And we're hoping that we can then enhance the climate services in terms of the prediction of climate events. So as an example, so if we are understanding the storyline, so there needs to be 3 years of hot summers, and then a cold winter, and then wind from the west, then we have a flood wind, for example. It just kind of something. So if the cocktail is right, then we can, then there will be a strong event, and that needs to be done, implemented into the servers. And once they are learning the situations in detail, we can much better say that what will be upcoming in the far future. That's also another kind of key word, because we have been already talking about disasters which are quite quick, and then Earth observation, which are doing the monitoring, and then also the climate design and the climate pilot, which are going into the far future. So what's happening until the end of the century. In this project here, on Clean project, we're targeting the near future. So that means the next 6 months, which is called in the climate domain this is the seasonal forecast. And here we're getting again into the next very big difficulty, because doing a seasonal forecast prediction itself is very, very difficult. And well, it's difficult to have that with a high precision. And here we are hoping that we can take artificial intelligence of bringing us a step further and giving better predictions of what's going on within the next 6 months, for example. So then that would mean that we are facing a strong winter or a weak winter or something like that, and that would change quite a lot of decisions and may optimize the systems. Okay, so I'm stopping here on that way, but feel free of reaching out. Then we have another one. This is again in the very beginning. That was the GeoA3 project, where we have one of the use cases in Tallinn and Helsinki about cities. And so here that's a bit related to that, talking about the smart cities as well. This is the integrated digital built environment pilot. So we are phasing buildings and facing buildings for implementing or for enhancing the ideas of smart cities. And what we try to do is making benefits from the analysis of the current integration capabilities, and then analyzing the expected lead to the further joint standardization work between the OGC and then the building infrastructure. And here, this is Ingo Simonis in contact, in charge of that. So if you would like to have something more, it's also an initiative which is quite new, or is just recently to be kicked off. And it's recently to be kicked off and will run. I'm not sure. It's a pilot, so most likely a couple of months, and to be rolling out. Then there's another one which is just to give you a next idea of how we continue and how we what we're doing. This is Iliad, which is related maybe in the very first initiative that I was introducing was the marine SDI. So here we are going kind of a bit in line with that. So in this case, it is really focusing on seas and oceans. So we are far away, or we are not looking at the border and the transition and the coastlines. We are really underwater. Now, and then starting to model the integration and advanced analytics for this space. And then you have here a nice picture, but for sure, well, this is then targeting fishery markets, etc. That coming up with market ready solutions. And then here, that's again a story from Europe. If you're looking at the fights in between Great Britain and France, and then you can understand that this is definitely a topic to deal with and to understand, and provide information in much more detail. And I think, yes, that was the overview of everything, as I said, from the ongoing projects. But we have a lot worked over the last months, and submitted quite a lot of different projects and proposed initiatives. So here you see the abbreviations, or the coding, the numbers for the Horizon calls. So these are all calls which is addressing the European Commission, but then over that as well, and that we have others in different consortiums, where we are kind of writing the proposal, where we have been submitted the proposal. And I think this is something like more than 20 proposals are currently in the pipeline, where we are waiting for a positive response for sure. Normally not all of them will be accepted, but some of them, yes. And then that will be, this is a bit the outlook then for maybe if you have a next meeting and ISO meeting, so that you will get an update and knowing what's going on here. I took this graphic here, this picture showing the European Green Deal, digital transformation. So because that's one of the main topics which are currently floating around and is being addressed from many sides, and OGC is also strongly involved in that, or interested in getting involved, engaged. And the European Green Deal requires a common data space. So that's the idea of the European Commission for the moment. And then not only for the Green Deal, but then also for multiple different other domains. So the agriculture, for example, health, for example, so that they should all get their digital spaces, their common European data space, so-called. And in between of that, for sure, we need a better holistic understanding and in the exchange of information, of blocks, of infrastructures, and tackling then with a holistic view the different applications that we need to address. I think that's the last slide, and that I was a bit quicker than proposed. And that's the wrap up with a short breaks through all of the different projects from OGC, which are currently floating around. And yes, I think with that we can start discussions. And if you have some particular questions, I can try to answer them. I'm not sure if I can do that on all sides. Okay, so then I'm handing back to, I don't know, to Scott or.
Yeah, Niels, well, thank you very much. It was a great overview, and you saw tons and tons of comments and questions coming up. And maybe because it's freshest in your mind at the moment, Agneta and then Jan had some comments about the climate change pilot, and in particular how this might relate to other SDOs, including OGC's work towards UNGGIM, and of course the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, perfect question. So the climate change pilot is still under discussion, so everything is open, and you're welcome to contribute or to modify that if you would like to do that. And the keynotes, the keywords that you dropped, and that UNGGIM and SDI and the SDGs, and that's exactly where we are heading to. And that one of the points or the mandate for implementing climate services globally is by the global global framework of climate services. Yeah, the global framework of climate services, which is mandated or hosted by the WMO. And they are doing a very similar work to the UNGGIM. So UNGGIM is coming from the SDI approaches, and setting up the spatial data infrastructures or national spatial data infrastructures. And then here we can just fill the UNGGIM work with climate data, and then we are already a quite big step forward. And then the global framework of climate services are more coming from the user perspective, or from the United Nations, coming from the United Nations policy frame. And the climate pilot might bridge both of them. So we are trying to kind of taking the bits and pieces which is floating around, and that also bridging the efforts in between North America and Europe, as targeting the developing and the developed countries. And then also that in all of this discussions, we are having large parts of the world which are kind of cut off by good information, because of the information are stored in data which are too big to download into, for example, African regions or South American regions, where the bandwidth is not very strong. And then here we're trying to provide then services which are enabling access and data information also for these regions as well. And the main drivers currently, so it's all open, and we will give a stronger announcement also next week in the OGC member meeting. There is a special climate session, and how we are moving forward. And the main players are, or one of the huge interest is coming from Copernicus itself, so from the climate service and from the atmospheric monitoring service there, and to enhance their systems. So the European the Copernicus has a climate service with a large backend in the background, so the so-called climate data store. And here OGC standards are already quite nicely implemented, but they are for the moment changing everything, or changing quite a lot. So they have been developing many things in the past, and now it's a good time, because also Copernicus, the hosting institutions, ECMWF is moving away from Great Britain into Europe again, and here they are now taking the time of rebuilding the entire infrastructures in the background, having fair data principles, or having fair principles for the systems itself in mind. And and the climate pilot is kind of hooking on that ongoing effort. And rolling will be defined in detail then in January, and being rolled out then in springtime, something like that, where we are then calling for participation. Is that enough?
Agnieszka's hand is up.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for that reply, and thank you for the presentation. May I just comment a few words, Scott, if you have time?
Please.
So just to clarify my thing in the chat, I think, first of all, I think there's two things. First of all, I think we all wonder what we can do to contribute to face the challenges of the climate changes as an individual, but also now, of course, as an organization. And I remember attending the planning committee for OGC 6 months ago. I remember this topic was raised, and if I remember right, if it was you, Scott, or Nadine, saying that you had a discussion within OGC, what can we do? And I think this is something that I of course have been considering for ISO TC 211. How could we have this discussion at strategy, or where? I mean, it does also take time to arrange and organize that type of meeting. But so I remember also from the OGC planning committee, I mean, the conclusion is a little bit like, I mean, we can ask ourselves how our results, how our data is useful to face this topic, but we can also ask ourselves how we can let's say reduce the damage concerning climate change. I mean, by reducing travel and so on. So it's a complex topic. So it's interesting for TC 211 as well. The second comment is then that I mean, we have a joint work with the SDOs towards UNGGIM, and I think it would, I mean, we have an entry point to the UN system in that part, and I think it could be useful. At least I would be interested as chair. And now Peter is taking over after me after New Year, but I think this would really be an area of interest for TC 211 to maybe have a conversation about how we could contribute to this in this area together. Like I said, the world is small. We should join forces as much as we can. So thank you.
I can maybe reply on that directly, and for sure we have, well, when we're talking about climate change service, then we have two strategies, or following two strategies of adaptation and mitigation. So how can we adapt to the upcoming climate change, and then also how you mentioned that, and how can we actually avoid it, so that is try to keep climate change in check. So here we are following these two approaches, which are common for the moment. And then what you said about how to set up the roadmap, and then entering the UN systems, etc. So that's exactly also how we are thinking for the first phase, and how we should start with this initiative, and that we are having the first kind of pilot, or the first focus area, however it is being designed, as a period where we are getting familiar to each other, and the different participations and sponsors, and then bringing that into a form, kind of a report or a guideline or whatever, that these then being able to be handed over to the United Nations, to the subsidiary body of the UNFCCC, for example, or that could also be part of the UNGGIM, or so to ingest that then there. So, but I think it's pretty much in line what you said, and yeah, you were very welcome to help out.
Maybe I can just highlight for everyone the ways you can participate in these initiatives, the climate pilot and others that Niels highlighted a little bit in the front, but maybe to reiterate is that a number of you in the meeting right now already participate as sponsors. So we do have sponsoring organizations who provide funding to help offset the costs of the various participants in the initiatives. We have sponsors who provide resources to help us actually execute these, such as cloud storage or cloud processing time, data, etc. And then we actually have the active participants who are funded to work against these requirements. And so if you look at the Federated Marine Spatial Data Infrastructure project that's just kicking off, you have Denmark and the UK and the United States and Singapore providing funding to help the participants actually execute the work. We have New Zealand providing data and some use case requirements. And we on that, maybe not as much that one, but some others, we often have Amazon Web Services providing us processing time and cloud storage for large data sets, et cetera. And so we do have there's a lot of ways to get engaged in these projects. And you can also observe. And so you don't have to be funding or funded. You can just observe the efforts and formally sign up as an observer and have access to content as it comes out. So they're quite open, non-exclusive initiatives. We want as many people giving us ideas as possible. Any other questions from our esteemed colleagues here? You already commented on the GeoE3, which I'm not following super closely because I'm not doing as much innovation program work as I maybe would like. Don't have time. But I do know that one's been a great example of not just interoperability amongst the APIs, but also the fact that you can't have an API. An API does nothing interesting if it doesn't have some content to share, right? And so if you don't have your encodings intrinsically linked with your APIs, you're really not getting anywhere in it. It's a very practical project.
Yeah, exactly. And I've seen Jerry has already commented on that. I just put the link to the website also in the chat. So if you would like to have, we are populating that currently with the first content that we can show. Are there any questions again to GeoE3 which has not been solved? And then if this is not the case, I've seen also the discussion about FAIR, which I really like a lot, and how to interpret the A of accessibility.
Yeah, Niles, hi, it's Graham Wilkes from Natural Resources Canada, but also wear the hat with an ISO as a convener. But we're pretty excited about this concept and trying to socialize it and move it forward. And I think a lot of the principles of like FAIR Plus, like the idea of including more inaccessible users into accessing data and information and geo information, we have that as foundations in a lot of our legislation and government already. And like that accessibility is built into protecting marginalized communities and things like that, and individuals. And so we're trying to socialize this idea that, with the A that Peter Parslow had mentioned, is that, we're trying to support and develop technologies that help disabled individuals access geospatial information and data and such. And so I actually invited a colleague on the line, Shannon Denis, who is here today, who wrote an internal article about it. But it's something I think we need to really consider, that, when Agneta was mentioning about climate change and addressing these huge issues with flooding and remote communities, is that, we have to keep in mind that we have to tailor a lot of these tools and information with people that may not necessarily have traditional access to that as well too. So, and we're very lucky to have on our team at Natural Resources Canada a developer by the name of Peter Rushforth, who is developing a MapML implementation where you can actually drag and drop services into a web browser. So that kind of eliminates the accessibility access of having to be like a GIS or a geomatics expert to really access data and such. And so we hope that, as these conversations develop, we're a little more geared towards that direction as well too. So yeah, it's very exciting. Thank you, Niles, for sharing with that. And I don't know, Shannon, is there anything we can add to the conversation related to FAIR Plus?
No, I don't think so. I think there's been quite an extensive discussion on it. We have a paper that we can share if that would help. I saw there were some discussion points about adding additional terms, or different interpretation of FAIR beyond, the interpretation that we're suggesting with FAIR Plus. And I guess our decision to not, add an additional principle, but to really make modifications to the existing principles to include things like, accessibility and access to users from a technical perspective that might not have access in, say, more northern communities that don't have access to some of the technical infrastructure and web accessibility, but also those with persons with disabilities as well. So really trying to broaden the spectrum and make FAIR more fair, I guess. But that's all I guess I can add to that.
Thanks a lot, both of you. That I really like this discussion, and then I put in the chat and a little blog that I wrote together with colleagues in Canada from Uranus, and about the idea of putting FAIR into the services of climate change, and then we were naming that FAIR Climate Service, and but it's going in the same direction. That how is the accessibility actually to be interpreted, and how the information needs to be delivered, or the information systems needs to be built up so that people in remote areas or in regions with a lower bandwidth can also still access that. I was based 2 years in Cameroon, so that's kind of changing a bit also the perspective on this discussion. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and I would like to see your publication on that.
Yeah, we can certainly share that. Yeah. Sorry, Shannon.
Well, great. Any other questions or comments from folks? I think we've got less than a minute left, so perfect timing on everything. Nils, thank you again. Excellent overview. Anyone, if you have any questions about any of these initiatives or work we're doing, feel free to reach out to me, Nils, or anyone else on OGC's staff. We all try to keep as best abreast of all this work as we can, but can help connect you and let you know what projects are most active, what kind of exciting things are happening, and happy to fill you in. So thanks for that. And again, Agneta and Mats, thank you again so much for inviting us to have an extended discussion today. Look forward to the next time and hope to see everyone next week online.
Well, thank you, Scott. It's been a pleasure to hear about all the exciting projects that you have ongoing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, thank everyone. And
thank you.
Probably talk to a lot of you the rest of this week in my early mornings. Bye all.